Welcome aboard! We will be your guides during this magical journey into the movies. It's the perfect job for us because we love the movies. It's showtime! Ready when you are, CB!
Action!
Welcome to Monoreel Radio episode number 375. I'm Sean.
And I'm Jackie.
And we are here this week to review and discuss The Brave Little Toaster. Now this month, Jackie has celebrated a big birthday, so she gave herself the birthday gift of picking this month's slate of movies. So I have to ask you then, why The Brave Little Toaster? What is your history with this film that you obviously had to include it very early in your list?
So I feel like you and I haven't even really talked a lot about this outside of the show as far as what a staple this was during my childhood and how much I loved this film as a kid. And honestly, it's been one that I've been most looking forward to discussing since the inception of Monoreel Radio. Like, I can't believe it took this long to get to it. So I was taking full advantage of an excuse to do this. We had, I believed, taped this off of the television because I don't remember going to the video store and renting it that much, but I think that was because we already had it in-house.
Yeah.
But it was on all the time. And it's one that unfortunately sort of fell by the wayside because it is very hard to find. It's not even currently on Disney Plus. We watched this, I hate to say it, but it's on YouTube, and that's where we watched it. But this was a hugely formative one for me. I know we've definitely talked on the show about how much I love The Little Mermaid and how much of an impact that made because it was the first one that I saw in theaters, not just animated film, first film that I saw in a movie theater. But this came out the year before, and in all likelihood, I was watching it before The Little Mermaid.
Sure.
But I was obsessed with this one. I just loved, it's not something that I could articulate as a child, but I absolutely loved that they gave these inanimate objects a life. And that just hooked me on the medium from a very, very early age.
So my history with this movie is very different. We had rented it on VHS when I was very young, and we enjoyed it. And then we came down here to Walt Disney World on vacation as a family in 1994. Now, the funny thing is, we went to, it's now called Costco, but it used to be called Price Club. And we were told by my mom to pick out a tape that we were going to bring with us on vacation because we rented a condo. We basically rented a timeshare. So we coincidentally picked out Sleepy Hollow, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, which was really just Ichabod and Mr. Toad, but it was only the Ichabod version of the movie. But when you're going to Disney for a week, you're not going to watch the same tape for 7 days, right?
Sure.
So there was a convenience store by the condo, but it was like a brilliant concept because it was a convenience store that, if I remember correctly, also was attached to a pizzeria, which was also attached to a video store. And my parents told me and my brother, go pick out a tape. It was not a huge video store. It was kind of small, and it had all of the family movies plus whatever was a big hit at the time. And so we picked out Brave Little Toaster. This was what we watched on our 1994 trip between this and The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. So that was something that we loved it when we watched it. And if I'm being honest with you, we had only maybe seen it one other time up to that point, and I honestly cannot recall watching it ever again after we got back from that 1994 trip.
Now, did you remember a lot of it on this viewing, or had you forgotten most of it?
I had forgotten most of the songs until the first song kicked in. Once the first song kicked in, I remembered basically all of it. I remembered that they were trying to get back to the Master, having completely forgotten, though, that the Master was going to college. I thought that they just moved away. But I haven't seen this movie in, 32 years at the time of this recording. So I remembered the bare minimum. I remembered as much as I could about a movie that I had maybe watched 5 times in my life.
Admittedly, I had completely forgot how it ended, but as soon as I heard that first song, like everything came flooding back to me. But I do want to circle back to why, not that it is a forgotten favorite, but why it's not readily accessible, and why this is sort of not even buried as far as Disney movies go. This is not getting like the Song of the South treatment.
No, I mean, it's out there to be found.
But yeah, it is a little bit of an interesting history. Actually, I didn't know this, but I did a lot of research and I found it really interesting about how this movie came to be. It was actually an adaptation of a novella. The novella was written by Thomas M. Dish. It came out in 1980. That is also readily available to read online in a PDF, believe it or not. I actually read it yesterday. It was only about 37 pages. So it was a really quick read. And it was so interesting to see the changes that they made, because some of them are like a frame by frame adaptation of the story. And then others you can see where they really built things out. The other thing that I learned that was really surprising and made me love this movie even more was that it had gone to Sundance in the first year of the Sundance Film Festival. And it was well received by audiences and critics alike, but they didn't want to give it the award for the best of the fest because since it was a new film festival, they wanted to be taken seriously, which I don't know how much more serious you can take the film festival that Robert Redford established, but they didn't want to give the accolades to an animated film.
Yes, the brave little toaster, right? I get it. Yeah, so what's the other thing that's interesting to me about this is that John Lasseter was trying to get this made at Disney, and it was supposedly a lot of the Disney animators, a lot of people from Pixar, this was sort of going to be the first, or at least there were talks that this was going to be one of the first computer-generated animated films.
Right.
And Ron Miller ended up passing on it. The brass at Disney ended up passing on it, I think because they wanted something that was going to be made cheaply. And I think when they realized that this was not going to be a cheap movie to make, they decided to move on from it.
Well, especially because consider the timeline. We're a year away from the Renaissance. We're still in the weeds from Black Cauldron and Great Mouse Detective at this point.
Right. So what ends up happening is a number of Disney animators and a number of people who were at the top of the food chain at Disney Animation sort of split off and start this Hyperion Pictures. And the long and the short of it is they animated it in Japan. Under Hyperion, Disney financed it basically as an independent film, but they didn't retain the distribution rights. They were able to release it on home video, and they released it on DVD and Laserdisc, but they did not have the distribution rights for Brave Little Toaster, the first version of this. Its sequels are on Disney+, but this one is not on Disney+, and that's why it will likely never end up on Disney+.
Not if I can help it. I have completely reevaluated my list of things to tell Josh tomorrow when I see him in the parks. This is going to be the first one.
Oh, well, I'm happy for you. Well, with that being said, has the movie aged well? Do we think that it is still the brilliant film that it was when we watched it? And should it have done better at Sundance? Was it deserving of the title? That, on top of many other things, is what we are here to discuss today.
This episode is sponsored by Where in the Park. Our friends at Where in the Park make seek and find card games designed to play in the theme parks and turn your day into an interactive adventure. Game packs come with a deck of cards, each with an image on it that is hidden somewhere in the theming of the park, helping you to discover details you've probably walked past 100 times. Where in the Park game packs will spark curiosity, encourage connection, and make every visit to the parks even more memorable. Visit monoreelradio.com and click on our affiliate link to purchase your game packs at a discount.
Toaster, Blanky, Lampy, Radio, and Kirby, who is a vacuum cleaner, are appliances living in a cottage waiting for their master, a young boy named Rob, to return after being away for years. They do chores every day to keep the house clean and get hopeful every time a car drives by the house, hoping for their master's return after roughly 5.5 years. One day, a for sale sign is put up in front of the cottage, so Toaster proposes to the gang that they should head to the city to find their master. They use a rolling chair and a car battery for power, and they set out on their adventure where they encounter the wilderness and its various woodland creatures. One night, a storm blows Blanky away, and their battery runs out. Lampy uses himself as a conductor and gets struck by lightning, recharging the battery but leaving himself damaged and without a bulb. Eventually, Kirby rescues Blanky, who is tangled in a tree, and they continue their journey. As they fall into deeper peril, they eventually lose their battery and fall into a bog. Radio plays what he believes will be his final broadcast, which is heard by a scrapper who rescues them with the intention on reselling them for parts. When he tries to disassemble Radio for his tube, Blanky, Toaster, Lampy, and Kirby scare him, and all of the appliances that are in his little shop break free. Our group finds their way to the city, and we see that the master is all grown up and is preparing to go to college. He and his friend/girlfriend Chris, it's a little undefined, they set off to go to the old cottage because he wishes to retrieve these old items so that he can bring them to his dorm room and not have to buy new things. The old appliances see the master's photo, and they see how much he has grown. They are reunited with the old TV, who used to be in the cottage and was now brought to the city, who tries to tell them what has happened. But the new appliances change his channel before he can tell the crew what happened, and they throw the old appliances out the window into a dumpster, which is then taken away by a dump truck. At the scrapyard, the appliances wait for their fate. However, the master returns home upset that he could not get his items because he went to the cottage and he saw that they were gone. TV runs a fake ad for the scrapyard, so the master and Chris go there to shop because they think they are going to a bargain store. They arrive, and they find a picture of the master as a child that Blanky had been carrying with him the whole time. He then finds all of his childhood items. Well, the magnet at the disposal yard recaptures all of them, including the master, sending them towards a large compactor on a conveyor belt. Toaster throws himself into the gears of the machine, saving all of them while destroying himself. The master repairs Toaster and takes all of them to college with him.
I'm so excited to talk about this. Let's dive right in here. This first shot where we're pushing from the mountains past the trees into the house, it reminds me of the old mill. And, that was basically the test run for the multiplane cameras. So I love that we see these classic techniques going all the way back to Walt still being employed here. And this is where immediately I was so much more appreciative of this being an indie film and them not trying out CGI with it, because, you just let the artists do what they do best. And we're going to see that throughout this film, because that was something, for as much as I enjoyed the animation as a kid, I was absolutely floored watching this again years later at how beautiful some of it is. Like the first shot of the toaster and you see the sun reflecting off the chrome. I was like, this is just pure artistry. And I love that it was just hands off to let the artists do what they do best.
The opening shot where it's panning the cottage, I'm going to do that all day. College cottage. The pan of the cottage is unbelievable, and from the moment you meet these characters, the way that they were able to take their physical structure and make a face out of it, to make a body out of it. And you can later see the influence where, like, the magic carpet gets their mannerisms, and they did it here with Blanky first, right? And there's, even with Blanky specifically, certain mannerisms where it looks like he's folding his arms. And you saw the animators, the 9 Old Men, were doing this stuff in Robin Hood, right? So it's great to see that lineage in that hand-drawn animation. But yes, everything they did to make these inanimate objects into characters, you can see where, like, the influence, I would assume, and I'm just spitballing here, and you said the same thing, where this would kind of later become certain elements in Toy Story, but that's different because those are toys with bodies and faces. It's taking the inanimate objects and giving them a body That's the most amazing part to me, and I think that's what drew me in as a kid.
Absolutely. That was one of the biggest things that surprised me on this rewatch was how many parallels there are to Toy Story, and we're certainly going to get into those. But I want to hit on what you're saying about the animation. I think a lot of that also comes from that so many of these animators were just starting out in their careers. It was early on. Again, so many of them got picked up by Disney during the Renaissance. So I think that you're seeing a lot of those early lessons that they were learning with how to animate reflected here because they're doing it on their own. They don't have a studio breathing down their neck necessarily. It reminds me of what Randy Cartwright told us when we interviewed him when we did way back in the day when we did Waking Sleeping Beauty about how he did the magic carpet. And a lot of animators learn they get their start learning with a sack of flour, and you have to make it emote. And that's exactly what we're seeing here. And I think that that's what really made me fall in love with it, is that these everyday objects just had such strong facial features and strong personas. There's such great world building here. Like, you know who these characters are immediately. And, you know, we always praise the Pixar films like the Monsters, Inc., like the Toy Stories, for just doing such a great setup and establishing exactly where we are. And I think that this film was really the groundwork for things like that, because you just get it immediately. What I really love is how they don't reveal if this is just like you do get the impression, you know, it's like a cabin upstate that you're using for the summer, not year round, but you don't know if this is just you're waiting for like Memorial Day weekend or the kids to get out of school for the family to return, or if they've been gone a long time. And they slowly sort of peel that back by showing how much dust has accumulated. And then in the dialogue, it really does start to come out with how they feel abandoned.
Right, because Kirby says that they've been doing this for 2,000 days. So the calculation would be just a hair under 5.5 years. That the family's been gone for. And
we do have that sort of confirmed later on when we see the passage of time, how the master, whose name is Rob, has grown. So, you know, we get a little bit of the bickering between the characters. Like, that's going to happen. You're stuck in the same place with each other. And then we get the first song, which is not one of the musical numbers. It's just, you know, used to get us into this cleaning montage. I love this shot of the radio, the shadow of the radio dancing across the rest of the cast. I'm probably going to say this a million times throughout this review. These point of view shots that they employ to like get us down on the floor with these appliances are absolutely incredible. That was something like I would have never picked up on when I was a kid, but watching it now, they hardly ever use wide shots. They only do it to establish a scene once in a while. But by and large, we are like in it with these characters. We're at their eye level. It really makes you feel like you're in the room with them. So I just loved that shot. I thought it was so clever. And again, this is what happens when you back off and let the artists do what they do.
Well, I think for me as a kid, and it stood out to me now, I can articulate now what I couldn't appreciate about it then, was even though you're watching hand-drawn animation and you know you're watching a cartoon, it looked so real. Because even looking around this room right now at inanimate objects on the floor, but we have a big window in the studio here that casts a lot of light. We have our desk, we've got, you know, our end tables here, we've got a coffee table, and you can just see how the natural shadow from the light projects, and you can see how the sunlight literally puts shadows on the wall. Watching this movie and talking about specifically the shot that you're talking about, where radio is dancing and you're just seeing the shadow skip across them, in a cheaper animation with less skilled animators, Radio would have just been on the floor, and you would have had a completely flat shadow. It wouldn't have had any contrast. It wouldn't have had that stretched from that forced perspective, because he would have just been perfectly lit right from behind. And that's not exactly what you get here. So you can see where there was a lot of TLC, where they took depth into consideration when they drew everything that they did. The depth in this movie is unbelievable.
It's incredible. And especially, too, because the song that the radio is playing is Tutti Frutti. It's Little Richard, you know, it's upbeat, it's lively, and you have all of them hopping and bopping around. Even Kirby gets in on the action eventually. One teeny tiny, just minutia.
I think we're going to say the same thing, by the way.
The kitchen, it reminded me of Roger Rabbit. That's not what I'm bumping on. I actually thought that was kind of nice, especially because we are still sort of living in that era, but it totally reminded me of the Baby Herman.
Scene,
yeah.
The cookie jar scene.
But that kitchen is behind the staircase, which I think is sort of like Kirby's, where he lives in that closet.
Uh-huh.
It's only there for the cleaning sequence. And then that's where the air conditioner goes, which we're going to talk about momentarily. It's kind of a continuity error where that eventually becomes a hallway where the air conditioner is. And I think that might come in part from having it animated both here and Japan.
So, not where I thought you were going, but I did have a bit of an inconsistency thing as well. And I might as well just get this out of the way. There are times, I believe that these objects are alive without needing to be plugged in. They can move, but they don't exactly function the way that they're supposed to function. But then again, other than flashbacks, we don't ever see Toaster operate as a toaster. There are times where they need to be plugged in and times where they don't have to be plugged in. And there is a bit of an inconsistency with that. And that's one thing that, as a 5-year-old kid watching this movie, I didn't think anything of it. But as somebody that's pushing 40, I'm looking at it and I'm like, well, I understand the whole idea of bringing the car battery. And you have moments where they're like, we don't have enough cord. And then you seem to have plenty of cord later. There was a little inconsistency with the power, but for the sake of this being a children's film, I'm willing to overlook that.
I agree. I like how they use the cords for conflict throughout, because there are times where they are quite literally handcuffed by their cords, but there are other times when, like, Lampy is on and is not plugged in. Okay, so before we circle around to the air conditioner, that's one of like the biggest scenes in the movie, and I think one of the most memorable for if you saw this as a kid. We get the car passing. Blanky hears the car.
Yep.
Everyone springs into action to their positions, much like watching Andy open gifts on his birthday. This was the first point it clicked in my head where I was like, oh my God, this parallels Toy Story. Everybody knew what to do. They wanted to see if the car was, if it was the master and the family coming back to the house, and then they're all going to have to run back to their respective places and, you know, deanimate the classic Andy's coming, and then fall to the floor, you know. But, you know, they all just sprung into action, knew what to do because they've done this how many times, hoping that it's going to be the master coming back.
Yeah, it's this childish naivete that makes them all endearing. Even Kirby, because Kirby's the first one to sort of poo-poo on everything and get it through your heads he's not coming back sort of deal, but then even he lets his guard down and he gets excited. Like, you see it in the dancing scene, and then you see it here. He secretly hopes that the master's coming back.
Exactly, because when he goes to bat with the air conditioner, he immediately takes the side of everyone else.
Correct.
And you see where there's a line drawn and where his heart truly lies. And you do see it when the picture breaks too.
Yes.
Because he is crestfallen just like the rest of them. But yeah, let's get into the air conditioner. We're going to talk about this incredible cast because they got some heavy hitters here, but this is such an unbelievable performance by Phil Hartman. It's worth bringing up right now. I love the Jack Nicholson quality that he gave in this performance. I think this was the first instance where this film traumatized me as a kid, where the air conditioner gets so worked up that he blows a fuse. I didn't really mention that at the top of the show. I mentioned how much I love this, but this was much like Return to Oz for me. I loved it, and I also feared it. I wanted to watch it all the time, but it left some scars. And this was that first instance. The other thing that I had completely forgotten about this scene that had me clutching my pearls when the air conditioner says to the vacuum, "What are you going to do, Kirby? Suck me to death?" I died laughing. And that was also the instance where I went, oh, this was never a children's movie.
My favorite part about it is air conditioner's dead. Oh, well. Let's move on. They go on like nothing happened. In fact, Kirby's like, well, he was a jerk anyway. All right, well, what are we going to do now, guys? It's just like nothing happened. It was almost like they were relieved that he was gone.
Exactly. So now the car doubles back and we see someone get out and they put the for sale sign on the front lawn. This is another one of those absolutely incredible shots.
Yep.
The use of reflections in this film is just, I mean, they're doing it intentionally for metaphor, but the way that it's animated is absolutely stunning. You see in the reflection our main character's reactions to the sign going in as it's flipped around. Like it's just the most incredible freaking shot.
Yeah, it's so well done. And then what they do really well is Toaster comes up and says, all right, let's go ahead and let's get out of here. Yeah, those were the exact words that he used, by the way. He was just basically like, let's get to the city. Let's go find Master ourselves. So they try doing all of these tactics to make a mode of transportation.
Right.
And they end up trashing the cottage.
Yeah.
It's such a wonderful plant because when Rob comes back later, it looks like the cottage got ransacked, almost like they were robbed, like somebody came in and destroyed the place, having no idea that up until a couple of days prior it was fine, and it was in fact your appliances that you're trying to find that destroyed everything. The mattress, the refrigerator, like the whole thing was really well done.
No, it's so brilliant because it is... This is where the first conflict arises with them being plugged in and they have to figure out an alternative source of power. So it works in the moment, but that payoff later on makes it 10 times more brilliant because it's perfectly plausible now that these appliances would be gone. This is the second point where this film traumatized me as a child because that was one of the things that I remembered most about it, having not seen it so long, was like this sense of loss. And looking at it now, I see how intentional that was because one of the themes of this film is loneliness, and how things change over time. And we're especially going to get into that later on in the discussion with the technology of it all. But I remember when they decide to leave the house, and especially once we get into our first song, the lyrics, just that sense of, I think one of the lyrics is, your heart wants to stay, but your head says to begin. And that like hit me as a child. But this sense of loss that these appliances have for the master, this made me terrified to be separated from my parents. Like, I think that's natural for every kid, but this gave me some like deep-seated issues with it. Like, I think I was more terrified than the average kid about, getting lost when you're out in public with them. But like, even it made me dread the future and going off to college one day, knowing that I was not going to live with them forever. Sean is just shaking his head. But yeah, no, this is where my trauma comes from.
Yeah, sure. This is the same person that would ask her parents why Santa Claus found it appropriate to break into people's homes and leave gifts. Santa, when he visited their house, left the presents on the stoop.
Listen, I'm from Queens. They always told us not to let anybody into the house, okay?
You were from Queens Village. You act like you lived in Bedford-Stuyvesant. You were not in a bad area.
That's why we left. Otherwise, we would have stayed there.
All right, let's talk about the first song here, City of Light. When I heard the song kick in,
Yep.
I went, oh my God, I honestly forgot that it's not a musical in the traditional sense, but I went, oh my God, I forgot that this had songs. And as soon as this one hit, I remembered all but one of them. It all came flooding back to me. It is a fun song. The way that they harmonize with the cast.
Oh my God.
What a performance in general.
It's incredible. Yeah, same. Everything just came flooding back. I had remembered a couple of the songs, like the B movie. We'll get into that. I had forgotten about this one, but as soon as I heard the melody, everything, I knew it word for word as soon as they started singing. But I really appreciated the lyrics so much more. And what's funny is that I didn't realize how many words I learned from this song when I was a kid. I love everything about it. The harmony, like you said, the way the song builds. And I love that this sort of becomes the score for the rest of the first act. And then something that I had noticed this time around that I never, thought twice about as a kid, the vacuum has to stop and empty his bag.
Yeah, it was hysterical.
I died.
And they had to let him go have his privacy behind a tree.
Yeah, Toaster's making Blanky look away.
Yeah.
It's, oh my God.
Really,
So
really funny.
So funny. So then we get into the first night. They find a clearing in the thicket. And everybody kind of turns on Blanky. All he wants to do is snuggle. I'm sure this is not the first time that he's attempted this, living in the house alone with everyone, unless he's just stayed on the bed. If that's his thing, if that's his place. But I was like, why is Toaster being mean to him too? That was the only thing that felt a bit unmotivated.
Yeah. And it's even Lampy later questions Toaster. Why all of a sudden are you being so nice to him? That comes later on, but yeah, to your point, Blanky, I think, and it's just a guess, I feel like Blanky, because now he's an electric blanket, right? He's a heated blanket, but he's still a blanket. I think that they were trying to make that character the most childlike.
Oh, for sure.
The most like a baby, because Blanky cries a lot if something goes wrong, and I think that they were sort of trying to... I feel like they were trying to build him like the annoying little kid that was just being a baby the entire time, to build him up to be so enduring, because when Blanky has those moments where he is so protective of everybody else, I'm not going to say it's out of character, but it's a step up in maturity.
And the bravery that he demonstrates sometimes. I mean, I know it's the brave little Toaster, but Blanky has, I would say, moments of equal measure.
Maybe even more so. Yeah.
There's one in particular we'll get into. So then we get this pond scene. We hear City of Light as the score. All of the pond creatures are, singing apart, or not singing apart. They're sort of humming apart. This is where, and I know that they cut the script down to get this to an hour and a half, but I'm surprised that this is the part that got left in because I don't want to say it drags, but this was an interesting choice to let this part breathe. And then within it, I'm surprised. I feel like they rushed through the biggest point of this scene, which is when the flower sees its reflection in the toaster. That's a huge part of the novella. And everything, by the way, that has happened to this point is basically beat for beat the same story. Basically, the entire first act of the film doesn't deviate from the source material. And then the second and third act, it definitely feels like 3 vignettes, but they are there is a very clear through line through all of them. But the second and third act are where we have the biggest changes. But all of it comes from the source material. But the flower is a huge moment in the novella. There's a poem, and I was talking about loneliness being such a huge theme. This is one of the instances where we see it the most, where the flower thinks that it's found one of its own in the toaster, realizes that it's not a real flower, it's a reflection, and then Toaster just abandons it,
leaves
without a word. That's kind of like a thing. He just bounces. This is the second day. Air conditioner's dead. Let's get out of here.
Yeah. To your point, like this whole thing, for a lack of a better term, it just seemed, I don't want to call it useless, because the animation's beautiful. It's really well animated.
Yeah.
But I feel like there was something that was supposed to happen here that was supposed to be a big piece of this. And to keep the runtime down, this whole thing felt chopped up to the point where I'm like, why even bother having any of this in here? I guess because they didn't want to completely deviate from the source material. But if you don't read the source material, you don't understand why the flower is a thing. I guess you can connect it to Blanky and why Toaster was being nice to Blanky because he saw how somebody felt being cast out, but you never saw that character arc from Toaster because Toaster just left. And there was a part of me that's like, did you leave this in here just for the bright colors and for the animals so that you could appeal to little ones? Because the whole thing is either fun or chaos, and there's no in between. Because at first it seems like it's going to be a lot of fun, and the appliances are going to have a great time with the animals, but then it seems like the animals are almost torturing the appliances, and then when it comes time to go, the animals are all waving goodbye, and the appliances are like, bye! And it seems like we had this weird, happy conclusion that we never saw build to. It felt choppy.
I think because the rest of this film gets dark, very, very dark.
Yeah.
I think that you needed some kind of levity for the kids to appreciate. But again, it's just odd that it's here when this is supposed to be such an impactful moment with this flower, because it's not just, to your point about Blanky being cast out. The flower is a parallel. All of these appliances have been abandoned by Rob.
Right.
So it's very odd to see Toaster walk away and do the very thing that you're trying to escape from. Because then the flower, it's not just disappointing, it starts to wilt. And that's, the
it's
whole
a powerful moment.
It is, because that's the whole point of it, is without love and care and connection, that's what this movie is really about. You're going to wither up and die. But it's just surprising to see that, like, they didn't give the flower the same autonomy as the rest of the appliances that can just get up and continue on their way.
Yeah. Like I said, to me, it felt like either this entire thing was unnecessary or this entire thing was meant to be more, and it just got hacked apart. I think that's obviously what happened here.
I don't think it was hacked apart in the sense of, like, when Katzenberg came in and started editing things. I think it's just maybe they cut it from the script, but you just needed a button on this scene. So then we get into the second night. This is one of the instances where we see some inconsistencies with Lampy being plugged in, because they need to give the battery a rest. Kirby tells him to turn the light off, but then he finds the hollow tree that he's going to have them sleep in, and he illuminates it. It's for the jump scare of it all. But this is where we see him working without being plugged in. Speaking of jump scares, we get Toaster's nightmare.
Which was the nightmare of every child.
Exactly. We see, before we get into that, Blanky, this is where he starts to win everyone over because he's providing shelter. And that's something we've sort of glossed over at this point, is not only do these characters each represent, like, different points of view You said like Blanky is the childlike innocence. Kirby is the older, wiser one. Like, you have all of those traditional story elements and points of view coming from each of these 5 characters. But the other thing is that they're each representing, it's what they're each representing to the master. The toaster is nourishment. Blanky is shelter and warmth. They're each providing basic human needs for him. So I like that we get Blanky highlighted in this way. And I like that Toaster starts coming around to him. But yeah, I don't know what's worse as far as this nightmare. The scary clown firefighter or Toaster dangling over a full bathtub.
In any case, both terrifying. Man, growing up in the 80s and the early 90s.
What a time.
What a time.
What a time to be alive.
Man, these cartoons didn't care, okay? We didn't have Tangled. They didn't care about that. We had things like this and The Land Before Time and The Black Cauldron. They didn't care. They went for it.
This predated Land Before Time, too.
I know it
This
did.
is like the OG. And this is not even the worst scene.
It's debatable for me. Maybe, well, Santa Claus had to leave presents on the stoop, so you and I are not going to be on the same page here.
No, there's a more psychologically damaging scene, but to me as an adult, I would have never realized it as a kid, but we'll get to that. Worthless just takes on a whole new meaning.
I want to talk about another inconsistency that even I remember as a kid didn't make sense. So that's the thing. Like, if I'm 7 years old and this didn't make sense, and I'm watching it now in my late 30s and it still didn't make sense, for all the TLC that they had taken when it came to so many other things in this movie, I was just surprised to see this. Blanky gets blown away.
Right.
Okay? And Kirby, who didn't have enough cord at one point in the movie, now has more than enough cord to throw cord up above a branch. It's anchored at the bottom.
Like a pulley system.
Like a pulley. But he himself is acting as the pulley system because he has the cord in his mouth. And he's using that to climb up to retrieve Blanky. And they come back down. Later on, when I mean later, I mean like 5 or 6 minutes later, Kirby shorts out.
Yes.
Because he swallowed his own cord.
Right.
And I just couldn't understand, unless there's something I missed, why he could swallow his cord and operate fine in a rescue scene, but then roll over the cord, and now it's causing him to short out by the waterfall later. It didn't make sense to me as a kid, and admittedly, it didn't make sense to me now.
Maybe just it could have used some more connective tissue that when he went to rescue Blanky, he was sort of sacrificing himself, which we're going to see him do again in a minute. But I'm wondering if that was the implication that he did some damage to himself, and then that's why he quite literally shorts out. And it's actually a funny kind of throwaway line when they're like, just keep it in carpet sweeper mode. He's coming around.
Yeah.
But yeah, we are going to see Kirby act as the hero and the one that really keeps bailing them out of all of these situations because, and then they eventually call him on it. And it's like, no, we love you. But yeah, that was, I honestly thought that was a scene that I had forgotten from not having watched it in a while. I thought Blanky, they were just going to encourage him to, sort of parachute down exactly and catch him. But I think that's why they were sort of trying to do like a setup and a payoff with the vacuum. So this is where we really start to deviate from the book because in the novella, they find a boat and then that eventually gets them to the junkyard. So the character that we see at the parts shop, he in the novella is working at the junkyard and he's deeming what stays and what goes. So now you get sort of 2 acts out of that one sequence, which this is where I think that was a really smart move as far as the adaptation to like stretch it out and let it breathe. And now you've got 2 really villainous scenes. So in our film version, after Kirby snaps, they try to make it across the waterfall and they don't, which I feel like it happens so fast that they just drop. And then he's got this big decision to make to go in after them, which shouldn't be a big decision. Like he takes a beat to think about it, and they do a really great misdirect because we see him leave. Again, they play with the camera angles in the most brilliant way. We're looking up at the cliff that they all just fell from. Kirby backs away, and you think he's just leaving, but he's setting up his dive. And then because he can inflate the bag, they all sort of float down and he gathers them up one by one.
So now they do the brilliant thing, because you don't really have a villain in this yet. So they turn a scrapper into a villain inadvertently. It's a brilliant, brilliant move.
It really is. Before he picks them up, they're sinking into the swamp. This is one of those instances where Blanky outbraves Toaster, I think, because Kirby goes first and he starts pulling the rest of them in, and, you know, Lampy goes next and Radio points out, you're sinking too, pal. And they all realize that they're going down with the ship, which is Kirby. But Toaster says to Blanky, try and let go. Try and uncoil yourself. Try and get out of this. He still has a chance. And Blanky's like, I'm not scared. Oh my God. Messed me up as a kid. Messed me up now.
And they get rescued by the scrapper. And this is what I'm saying is brilliant. The scrapper's technically not doing anything wrong. What he's doing nowadays, he'd be celebrated for it. He's finding old and broken equipment, and he's taking out the useful parts, and he's repurposing it. That's such a big thing now, is repurpose. Take things out of the landfill, put them back to use, repair them. He's doing a thing that would be celebrated today, but we have to make it bad, and we almost make him into a Frankenstein / reanimator, which is basically the same thing as Frankenstein. Like just to make him a villain and make him scary, because, you know, think about it. This is also like on the heels of Short Circuit. Don't disassemble number 5. Well, we're disassembling everything here. The brilliance of it. I love what they do here.
I love it. I love every single thing about it. I love the tonal shift. Again, traumatizing as a child, but I'm pretty sure this is also where my love of all things horror comes from. Is this this movie? I do not give it enough credit for how much it did for me. Like we're gonna have to reevaluate my top 10, and I've given far too much credit to Little Mermaid when this is really what injected Disney into my veins. This whole setup is brilliant because it tells us everything we need to know about this character, from the parts harvest shop that he's got set up here, the dog that he calls Quadruped. Then he makes himself a protein shake. I don't know if you caught this. It's like well, not a protein shake, but like back in the day before we were taking protein shakes now, it was all like Slim Fast.
Yeah.
So there was some sort of spin-off of a Slim Fast on the counter next to a bag of marshmallows that he immediately eats after he drinks the,
yeah.
I think it was like something be gone, fat be gone, it might have been called.
Yeah, something like that.
But then he's stuffing his face with marshmallows. It just tells you everything you need to know about this guy in 2 seconds flat. And then you get to the back of his shop and this house of horrors with all of these older appliances and dated technology that have been cobbled together into something else. And this is where it really does feel like quite the departure from the first act. And it feels that this is more closely connected to the third act, because this is where you get the metaphor for not even a metaphor. It's pretty overt about discarded items and keeping up with technology. You're going to see that even more once we get to the apartment. But like, my gosh, B-movie, this song is just brilliant. It is Broadway quality. It's just everything. This is like, it reminds me of like Rocky Horror or Little Shop of Horrors, where you get that brilliant blend of a musical and the horror elements.
This was the song I forgot about until they started kicking into it. And it was like getting struck by a bolt of lightning, and I remembered everything because it's such a great song. And to draw more parallels to Toy Story, this is Sid's house before it's Sid's house, right?
And also in the second one, the toy shop.
Yes. Yeah, that's right, where he's doing all of he's doing all the improvements. He's fixing Woody up.
Well, that was the one that was restoring the antiques, but I'm thinking more of Uncle Al, because he looks like him.
Oh, Big Al. He looks like it's the Wayne Knight character whose name escapes my mind.
Exactly. No, I think it's Big Al's Toy Barn.
That's the toy store, but I don't think that's who that was. I haven't watched Toy Story 2 in a while.
They look very, very similar.
Yes, they do.
But yeah, no, this is the song that I remembered most vividly, and it sort of like has played in the back of my head for the better part of my life. Like, I just feel like it's one of those things that you always hear, and not that I couldn't place it, but like, I don't know. It's just been in the background of the corners of my mind for ages and ages. Honestly, this is where I was sort of aghast that this was not Menken and Ashman, because this reeks of Howard Ashman, a number like this. They're not afraid to use the big words.
Yeah.
Just that like sort of horror music. And then I said it before, the tonal shift, it's really in these point of view shots. Again, we're low. We've got all these other Frankenstein appliances coming down at us and just sort of raining down. And then so much use of playing with the shadows in the cinematography here. This whole number, 10 out of 10 brilliant, and shame on you, Sundance, for not giving it its flowers.
And then, classic, we've swapped places, because now the appliances have made their way to the city, but Rob, all grown up, I gotta go to the cabin and go get my stuff.
Before that, though, there's a couple things that happen. The escape, this was where I was like, oh my God, this movie walked so Toy Story could run. When Woody orchestrates the backyard to come alive.
So play nice.
It's the best. This does it just as well, though. They decide to scare him to get out. And they lean into, let's show who we are. We'll show we're alive and we'll get out of this.
Yeah.
And then you have the air horn scream jailbreak. Yeah. Then you get the classic switcheroo. Like you said, I love how we get introduced to present day Master. You get the passage of time via these mantle pictures. I thought that was really smart. It was quick and to the point.
Yep.
We just see where he's at now. The only thing, and again, slight critique in an otherwise perfect film, spoiler alert, that's going to be my review. I wish it wasn't so specific about what Rob is grabbing from the cabin, because he hasn't been there in a long time. These are childhood items. They're not toys. I wish it was more just like, I got to go before we sell the cabin and see if there's anything I can use for the dorm. Just quick and to the point. And then once he sees them later in the junkyard, then it's like, oh my God, this was mine. This was mine. I remember this. Instead of, I need the toaster, I need the blanket, I need the radio, like a radio, sure. But I feel like everything else was sort of on the nose. And like, you're telling, I think Chris is the love interest, because there is a picture of her in Rob's room. Then it's like, I need to go get my security blanket.
Yeah.
I wish we had kept it a little bit more vague. What kills me about this is not just the switcheroo, that they've done all this work that took them days. And in a car, it took them probably, an hour to get up to the cabin maybe and get out of the city?
Well, that would make sense, though.
Yeah, it's like anything, like how we used to go camping in the Catskills. Yeah.
If it's a 40-mile drive, I can buy that it's going to take appliances a couple of days.
Oh, yeah. No. And I also buy the notion of like, you're going to go back and forth if you're using this on weekends during the summer. It has to be close enough to make that believable. But it just kills me, though, that they worked so hard, not just on this days-long journey. They missed the Master's return. This was what they wanted more than anything. And they don't get to see him in the house again. Very sweet moment where he fixes the air conditioner. That was super cute. And now we have the appliances track down the apartment, you see the classic. This is the first appearance of A113
Yep.
on the apartment door. I love it. I love
Yep.
it.
So you're into A113, and you're now seeing that they don't have the older crude appliances that they would just keep in their like summer cabin, right? Suffice to say, you're living in a metropolitan area that's quite a nice home. You've got some money, so you've got the latest and greatest of everything, and that's why they were never in a rush to go back to get you, because they had the latest and greatest of everything. But oddly enough, the way that the older appliances are connected to Rob, the newer appliances are, because the newer appliances want to go with him. So they stage this whole thing where they throw them all in the dumpster simply so that they still have a chance of going to college.
What's odd, though, is that the TV has been with Rob all along. And I love that our appliances have the familiar face to sort of help out here. But I love the flip of now the newer appliances, the flashy ones that you think Toaster and everybody else is going to be jealous of. Now they're the ones who are jealous because they're going to get to stay with Rob. And again, this is just where it's so brilliant, because you get the cutting edge song and our main characters are confronted with their reality of being phased out because of new technology. But it's also simultaneously shaming consumerism, because this is just going to keep happening. It's going to keep cycling through. And we see it already with the newer appliances who are already like, well, wait a second, we don't get to go either. Again, psychological trauma with these abandonment issues.
Yeah, but this whole thing is great with the song cutting edge, the way that it's made to look like an infomercial.
And the 80s vibe.
This felt like Genesis meets the B-52s. Like, the song is phenomenal.
I knew you were going to have a great comparison, so I didn't even like start delving into like what it sounded like to me. I remembered the song vividly. I remembered the number. But I forgot how like spot on of this era it was. And then you get, it's brilliantly cut back and forth with Rob finally arriving at the cabin, realizing that everything is gone. And he's saying, where's the toaster? Toaster flies out the window. Where's the radio? Radio flies out the window. It's great. A little on the nose, but it's still a great juxtaposition in the scene.
And I love that TV does crazy Ernies, because that was such a product of the time. There was crazy Eddies, or it was always crazy something. Or do you remember in Kings Park? The store might have been gone by the time you guys, moved out of the ghetto that you were living in, according to you. Do you remember Cheap John's? Because that was another thing when you would find.
Oh yeah, we used to go to Cheap John's. Sure.
Right, that was another thing. It was either crazy or cheap. So that was where it was. You're
Cheap
getting
John's, Cheap Sam's.
You're getting a bargain. It's either cheap or it's crazy. Pick your poison. Before we had the dollar store, that's what we had. And that's what it reminded me of. So I love that I'm able to watch this as an adult, because as a kid, it felt so familiar, because these were the ads that we'd see on television.
Oh,
these
yeah.
were the stores we would shop at. But for me now, like looking at it, it's such a time capsule.
No, and I love how TV is desperately trying to get everyone's attention, because now there's a lot going on here. We've got the appliances down at Ernie's disposal, the junkyard. That set is brutal.
So good.
But so beautifully drawn. The paint colors are just absolutely unbelievable. And now you've got Rob coming back to the house, telling his mom what's happened. Everything's gone. And she's just like, oh, take the new stuff. And Chris is all about, oh, take the new stuff. And then he's like, and I love this because it says a lot about Rob's character too. He's like, but what are you going to read by if I take your lamp? And she doesn't just say, oh, I'll get a new one, because that is part of it. I think, mom likes to spend a little bit of money and she doesn't care. She goes, oh, I just won't read. And I think that's another social commentary of how people weren't just, simple pleasures. They
Right.
weren't reading at the time because we're all too busy listening to the killer sound system or watching the flashy TV, going to the movies. It was such a smart line, but I like we learn a lot about Rob in this moment too, that he doesn't want to take the new lamp. He wants to find out what happened to his things. And, he's not just going to take it from his mother. Then we get, maybe it's not the biggest bop of the film, but I think it's the best song. And it's not something that I recognized as a kid. I think it's the best song now. We get Worthless.
It's a total banger.
It's a total banger. It's a Broadway caliber song. The vocals are absolutely insane because this is the same chorus that's been used throughout.
Yeah.
They're the animals humming at the pond. They're the appliances in the shop, and now they're the cars. But the lyrics are so deep, reflecting on life's purpose. And then this is what truly messed me up. Not as a child. This is the part that I didn't see as a child that I only saw now. The last car doesn't wait for the magnet to grab it. It drives onto the conveyor belt. Are you kidding? That is so messed up. Like, I'm not okay right now. And then the song just ends so abruptly. Like, I just wish there was just something more, or one more chorus, or like some big like banger of an ending, because it's such an incredible song. How these songs, I mean, are just not talked about more in the Disney canon. Like, do I expect to hear this one remixed at Disney Springs? No. But just, we don't talk about it enough. My God, it's so good.
And I love the magnet. I love the magnet as a character. It doesn't speak, but it's got its purpose. I pick up the junk, I put it on the conveyor belt, it gets crushed, and I do it again. And I'm not going to let a thing slip by. That it just takes its purpose so seriously, and you've now created another villain.
Exactly. This junkyard scene, though, walked so that the incinerator could run in Toy Story 3.
Yeah, I agree with that.
This was just a gut punch watching this. And again, it's Toaster jumping into the mechanisms to save them all, where I was like, this was never a kid's movie. My goodness. The only other thing that I bump on a little bit, Rob and Chris in the scene, not the brightest crayons in the box.
I'm still like, are they or aren't they?
She don't care.
She doesn't care.
I don't think she cares, because she's looking at all this other stuff like, oh, hey, this is hard to find. Like, I'm glad that you're having fun on this little excursion. But did you not notice that, regardless of whether or not it's your boyfriend, did you not notice that he's being, sucked towards his death here?
He disappeared and is screaming for help.
And he's right on top of her.
Yeah, I know.
That's the other thing. Like, we're getting these exaggerated point of view shots because everything looks big from Toaster point of view. But you mean to tell me she didn't turn around and see him on the conveyor belt?
Apparently not. Or she was waiting to get the grill off that car. I don't know.
Past that, though, I mean, it does end kind of quickly. We just see that the rest of the appliances are being, or not the rest of, our main appliances are being packed up and taken to college. And, they still have a purpose and they have reconnected with Master. It's a very happy ending, which is a relief after some really dark material. This is the biggest difference from the novella. In the novella, it is a kid going off to school, I believe. Or no, I'm sorry. They are at the junkyard and they're reclaimed by, the book calls her a mistress. A master mistress, I guess. Okay. She's a ballerina. And she's like an impoverished ballerina. She's living in the back of her studio, so she was just looking for some cheap appliances. So, there is sort of that similar ending in that it's a fulfilled purpose for everyone. But I'm glad that we get it's certainly a happier ending than Toy Story when Andy leaves them.
Sure. Even
Even though that is the perfect ending and they just should have stopped there.
Let's talk about our cast here, starting with Deanna Oliver, who plays Toaster. So endearing.
Yeah.
So endearing. So fun. And I forgot that Toaster throws themselves into the gear to save Master. Because to your point, the whole time I'm watching this, and I'm like, this kind of seems like Blanky's movie. The only brave thing Toaster did was say, let's go to the city. That was the only brave thing Toaster did. Toaster has turned their back on other appliances and the flour. You needed this moment, but Toaster is very, very, very charming.
I don't know that brave little Blanky would have had the same ring to it either. I agree. Charming is the operative word here. And I want to talk a little bit too about the character design. We hit on this earlier, but this is another area where it deviated from the illustration on the novella. And I think that's what makes Toaster even more endearing. On the novella, where we have Toaster's arms, it was inverted, so that's Toaster's nose on the side there, and the face was on the side of the Toaster.
Got it.
I love that even though it sort of flattened it out and it makes it more two-dimensional than three-dimensional, I just love the way that the Toaster is animated. I think that that's one of the things that initially drew me into this movie so much. Is it's exactly what you said. Toaster is charming, endearing. It's cute also at the same time. Like, it was just so easy to connect to as a child. But it's just amazing how Toaster has stood the test of time, because I still absolutely adore this character now.
And I think Blanky, played by Timothy E. Day, what a performance.
Oh my God.
I think is the most charming character in this movie by far.
It's like a 1A, 1B between Toaster and Blanky. But I remember as a child, just loving Blanky, pitying him a little bit. But my view has totally changed now, because I do recognize those acts of bravery even more.
You've got Timothy Stack playing Lampy. Lampy, when I was a kid, Lampy was my favorite, because that's what Lampy's purpose was, to be the goofy one. Lampy's Michelangelo. That's what he was supposed to be. Great character, great performance, and still to this day, I think, stands up. Not my favorite character now, but still stands out as a great character.
One of the things that I missed as a child that I appreciated now is the word repetition in the lines. So much of the dialogue is he'll start a sentence and end it the same way. And it's like, I think he says, all of a sudden you're hanging out with Blanky all of a sudden, or something like that. Like, it's repetitive. And the first time I was like, wait, really? But then by the second or third time it happened, I was like, oh, this is very intentional. So I really like that. Lampy does have an act of bravery too. When he tries to charge the battery, he sacrifices himself. I love the design of Lampy as well, because in the book illustration, it's like a rounded top of the lamp, and they just put the eyes up there. I love how they made they gave him like a snout.
Yeah.
I thought this was just really clever, and I'm wondering if that movement was the groundwork for the Pixar lamp.
John Lovitz plays Radio. I mean, John Lovitz, what a career he has had.
Oh my God.
He was absolutely perfect casting in this role.
I believe this was when he got cast for SNL and had to fight to stay in it. This must have been such a buzzy project in Hollywood that people were attracted to the indie nature of it all and not just the Disney paycheck, because he had to fight to clear his schedule before he went to SNL so that he could record the dialogue. I've read that he did it all in one day. I don't know how much truth there is to that, but if he knocked out this performance in one day, my goodness, what a feat. And I love all of the, like stylistically, how he does the broadcaster, he does
Yep.
the classic radio announcing. Like it's an incredible performance, one of his best.
And while we're talking about SNL alumni, you have to talk about Phil Hartman. You mentioned him before. He played the air conditioner, and then he played the hanging lamp, which was supposed to be like a Peter Lorre style player or character.
Yeah.
Very, very little dialogue here. Probably knocked his out in a day as well. But Phil Hartman was such a treasure.
I love that so many people did double duty for like their main appliance and like a secondary character. I also got, we said the air conditioner was definitely a hat tip to Jack Nicholson. But in the other lamp, I was also getting a little Vincent Price.
Yeah, could be.
And I think, that all lends to the horror of the scene, but like, oh my God, such a great performance. And he did so much with so little time.
Thurl Ravenscroft plays Kirby the vacuum cleaner. I mean, did so much with Disney. I mean, this is Hollywood royalty here.
Yeah, I mean, you'll recognize the voice immediately if you've not seen Brave Little Toaster. As soon as you hear Kirby's first lines, you'll be like, oh, this is such an incredible performance. It's gruff where it needs to be gruff. It's heartfelt when it needs to be heartfelt, but the range is just incredible here.
Wayne Katz plays Master Rob as an adult. I thought they did it so much to build this character with so little dialogue that I think the performance was a major payoff, because when he starts to perform the adult version, for lack of better, the young adult version of this character, it's still with that childlike whimsy, but he doesn't seem immature. I really thought the performance was quite strong.
Yeah. I think that they did the character a little dirty, the way that he just quite literally gets sucked up by the magnet. But the performance is solid for sure.
And it is worth noting that Joel Ramth played Elmo McPeters, the owner of the appliance shop.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because he's, such a staple in Pixar movies, in the early Pixar movies, unfortunately.
Yeah. So, final thoughts on the Brave Little Toaster, seeing as it is your birthday month and you picked the slate. I will let you go first.
Gosh, I mean, this ages like I hope to, like a fine wine. I loved it then, and I love it even more now, for a multitude of reasons. For being able to see new things that I hadn't seen as a child, for realizing what incredibly strong messaging it had and appreciating that so much more now. Learning that it was such a little engine that could kind of a movie, that it was independently produced, and that it made it to a festival and should have won the festival. That just makes me respect it all of the more. Again, enjoyed the animation as a child, but I appreciate for its artistry so much more now. The music, absolutely incredible. Enjoyed the bops when I was little, found deeper meaning in them now. This is, to me, it's a perfect film. I'm just going to say it. It absolutely stands the test of time. I will 1,000% be watching it. This is going to be a yearly occurrence for me all over again. And if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go and cuddle with my Super NES.
This movie, to me, is near perfect. Like I said, there's just a few inconsistencies that had it stood out to me now, but not as a kid, I would have probably given it perfect marks. But because as a kid, a couple of things happened where I went, but wait, and I still had that feeling now. That's the only thing that separates it for me from being near perfect to perfect. This movie has aged incredibly well. The plot is so simple. This is one of the shortest plots I've ever had to write out, yet they tell such a complete story that it's really an accomplishment. Selfishly, I wish that Disney had released this under the Disney banner, because the year that this film came out, Disney didn't have an animated film come out. But at the same time, they were finishing Who Framed Roger Rabbit and Oliver and Company and The Little Mermaid. So it would make sense that they probably didn't have the staff available. That's just a guess to get this done, and that's why it was easier for them to sort of do it as an indie film. But on the other hand, you know what? Had that not been an indie film, had these animators not broken off to go do their own thing in Japan to make this, had this been under the watchful eyes of Katzenberg or Miller or Eisner, I don't know that this movie would have been as good as it was. Yeah, because at this point it would have been Katzenberg, because this came out right after Great Mouse Detective and Black Cauldron. I don't know that this would have been as good as it was. Not that they didn't make great films with those guys. They did. But we also know that at times they didn't know animation the way that you needed somebody who knew animation. These people knew how to do it the right way, and I think that's why it is so strong. And I wish that we would get more films like this, where you put the creative into the hands of the creative. Quite honestly, that's what I'm hoping we get in the Great Big Beautiful Tomorrow that we were in now. But we want to know what you have to say about the Brave Little Toaster. You can shoot us an email, monoreelradio.com, or you can send us a message on all forms of social media at Monoreel Radio. News of the week is coming up, but first, a quick break. Jackie is an independent travel advisor helping families plan personalized vacations and create unforgettable memories in the most magical place on Earth. Planning for a Disney vacation can be stressful, but it doesn't need to be when you're assisted by a travel specialist who will work with you to customize the perfect vacation for you and your family. Jackie will help you determine which parks to visit on each day, ensure you know the ins and outs of essential tools like the My Disney Experience app, assist with booking dining reservations, lightning lanes, and other enhancements like ground transportation and travel insurance. Most importantly, Jackie will share all of her favorite hacks so that you can get the most out of your vacation. Visit monoreelradio.com/travel to start making magic now.
Hey everyone, this is Brian down here in South Florida. I'm about 2 hours south of Disney, and when it comes to planning vacations, Jackie's the way to go. When it came to booking my family vacation for my 2-year-old daughter and my wife, like everybody, I immediately went to the internet, started scouting prices. Just out of curiosity, I reached out to Jackie. She mentioned she was booking vacations for many people. So I gave her my list, my itinerary. She looked it over, and when she came back to me, she gave me her recommendations in regards to the parks. However, she also had new pricing associated with it. I've learned that going on my own doesn't necessarily mean that I'll be getting the best pricing. On top of that, it was stress-free. So all my vacations in the future are going to be through her because I don't have to think about it. She plans it. I give her some information in regards to what I want to do and create the itinerary for me. She's a market expert. She advised on which rides to attack first, which restaurants I should schedule on what day, and how to properly allocate my time to maximize my vacation. It was an amazing process. Thanks, guys. Talk to you soon.
This is the start of what I think is going to be a massive, massive month for Disney revenue. And if you are a Disney stockholder, you're probably going to be happy at the end of May, because in spite of the fact that the parks did see a dip in attendance, and I think that certainly would affect the stock price, the film division is going to skyrocket starting this month strong. The first 10 days that The Devil Wears Prada 2 has been in theaters exceeded their projections, right now sitting at nearly $500 million worldwide.
I contributed to some of that revenue. We'll definitely talk about that on our upcoming Dockside chat, because I have some thoughts on this one. It's interesting to see the change now that it is under the Disney banner. But I will say that I enjoyed it. It was nice being back in that world for a second.
But between that and in a couple of weeks,
Mando and
Grogu coming out, I mean, this is just, it's great news for Disney. I think it's a shot in the arm that they need, and I think it's important, having just talked about Josh D'Amaro, the fact that the first big release since he took over as CEO, now, of course, these films were in development long before he took over the position, right?
Sure.
But I think it's important that he starts to get some wins under his belt early, not only for Disney as a corporation internally to believe in the leadership, but I think for people that are fans of the company that did want to see some changes in a different direction. I think getting started off on the right note like this certainly invigorates you. I think that it injects a little bit of adrenaline into your blood if you are a fan of the Walt Disney Company in all facets.
No, I'm definitely happy for him that he's off to such a strong start, especially because he is the parks guy and the film industry end of it is the foreign part to him. So I'm really glad that he's got this win under his belt. But more to the point, I'm happier for the audiences because we've been saying it until we are blue in the face that less is more when it comes to theatrical releases. Last year, now granted, it had to do with 2 years fallout from the writer's strike, 10 movies. That is asking your audience far too much in and of itself when you're also expecting them to go to the parks and go on a cruise. Like it's just too much. So I think that we are set up for a much better pace this year, and they're going to see a lot more return at the box office as a result.
Thank you so much for joining us this and every week on Monoreel Radio. Monoreel Radio will always be free, but there are many ways that you can support the show. Please give us a rating wherever you listen to podcasts. Join the conversation on social media at Monoreel Radio on all major platforms. Share your favorite episodes with family and friends who may enjoy them. And of course, book your next trip with Jackie. Links to everything can be found at monoreelradio.com. We all get one story. Make yours a magical one.
On behalf of Monoreel Radio, we'd like to thank you for joining us. We'll see you at the movies, the stuff dreams are made of.